The wedding that changed everything. A wedding should unite families, not expose their darkest prejudices. On what should have been the happiest day of her life, she watched her husband's family crush the one person who sacrificed everything for her. They thought they knew exactly who she was, a poor girl marrying up. They had no idea they were standing on ground her family owned. The morning before, Leora stood motionless in the bridal suite, studying her reflection with unnatural calm. The room glowed with morning light, every detail flawless, every expense covered months ago without question. Her gown hung like a cloud of silk, her makeup pristine, her breathing controlled. Outside, the estate buzzed with final preparations, but inside, Leora felt strangely disconnected, as if watching her own life through glass. Her mother, Senna, sat quietly nearby, adjusting an old bracelet she'd worn for decades. Senna had always moved through the world with quiet dignity, never loud, never demanding attention. Her sacrifices had been invisible to most, noticed only by those who truly looked. "You're beautiful," Senna said softly. Leora's reflection smiled back. "You taught me to stand tall, Mama?" A sharp knock interrupted them. The wedding coordinator appeared, her expression tight with anxiety. "There's a situation," she said carefully. Leora's stomach dropped. "What kind of situation?" The coordinator glanced at Senna nervously. "Your husband's family wants to speak with your mother." Immediately, Senna rose gracefully, smoothing her dress. "I'll handle it." Leora watched her mother disappear through the door, unease coiling in her chest. She didn't know yet that this interruption would shatter the careful illusion everyone had been maintaining. The confrontation. Outside the suite, Senna was met not with courtesy but with cold judgment. Cairo's aunt spoke first, her voice dripping with disdain. "You cannot sit in the front row." Senna blinked slowly. "I'm the bride's mother." The woman actually scoffed. "This is a prestigious family event. We need to maintain certain standards." Another relative stepped forward, arms crossed. "Your presence might embarrass our more distinguished guests." Senna stood perfectly still, absorbing the words like physical blows. "Embarrass them how?" The aunt's smile was cruel. "Let's not play games. We know exactly where you come from." The sting was sharp, but Senna had weathered worse storms in silence. She'd survived poverty, raised a daughter alone, built something from nothing, all while people like these looked through her as if she didn't exist. "Security has been notified," the woman concluded. "Please vacate the ceremony area." Senna glanced toward the doors where her daughter waited, unaware. For one moment she considered fighting back. Then she exhaled slowly. "I won't cause a scene," she said quietly. "But my daughter will know about this." The relatives exchanged amused looks as if she'd told a joke. "She married into our family," one said smugly. "She'll understand where her loyalties need to be." Senna walked away, her steps steady, her dignity intact. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly imagine, was that the ground beneath their expensive shoes belonged to her family. Every inch of it. The breaking point. Inside the suite, Leora felt the shift before she saw it. The silence stretched too long. When Senna finally returned, her face was composed, but her eyes carried something heavy and dark. "Mama?" Leora's voice cracked. "What happened?" Senna hesitated, choosing words carefully. "They don't want me at the ceremony." The room tilted. "What?" "They said I would embarrass their guests." Senna's hands found her daughter's arms, steadying them both. "They said I don't belong." Anger erupted in Leora's chest, hot and immediate, but beneath it ran something colder, recognition. She'd sensed this arrogance before, disguised as politeness, hidden behind expensive smiles. "Who said this?" Leora demanded, her voice dangerous. Senna shook her head gently. "This is your day, my love. Don't let them ruin it." Leora stepped back, her expression hardening into something sharp and unbreakable. "They already did." Cairo burst through the door at that moment, all nervous smiles and oblivious optimism. "Is everything okay? We're almost ready to." "Your family just threw my mother out of our wedding." Cairo froze mid-step. "What?" Leora's tone could have cut glass. "They said she wasn't suitable to sit with them. That she would embarrass your distinguished guests." Cairo's face went pale. "They didn't, they wouldn't." "Did you know?" Leora's question hung in the air like a blade. Cairo looked away. His silence was the only answer she needed. The ceremony. The wedding proceeded, but everything had fundamentally changed. Leora walked down the aisle with her head high and her heart calculating. The guests admired the manicured gardens, the architectural elegance, the flawless service, never questioning who truly owned it all. Cairo's family sat proudly in the front rows, whispering approving comments about the venue's grandeur. One uncle leaned back in his seat and said smugly, "We chose exceptionally well for the boy." Leora heard it. She said nothing. Yet, during the vows she spoke clearly, her voice unwavering. She wasn't lying, but she was no longer naive. When the officiant declared them married, applause erupted. Cameras flashed. Champagne flowed. Senna stood quietly at the edge of the grounds, watching from a distance, unseen by most but visible to the daughter who mattered. The revelation. When the reception began, Leora finally made her move. She took the microphone gently, her smile practiced and perfect. "Before we continue the celebration," she said, "I'd like to acknowledge something important." The room quieted instantly, all eyes turning toward the radiant bride. "This venue holds very special meaning to my family." She paused, letting the words settle. "In fact, it has belonged to my mother's family for over 15 years. A ripple of confusion passed through the crowd. Cairo stiffened visibly. Leora's eyes found his family members one by one. "Which makes it particularly interesting that my mother was asked to leave her own property today." The silence was absolute. You could have heard a champagne bubble burst. Cairo's aunt laughed nervously. "That's not funny, dear." Leora's expression didn't change. "I'm not joking." She gestured toward Senna, who now stood tall at the room's edge. "My family also holds majority ownership of the estate your family currently lives on." Gasps erupted. Whispers exploded like fireworks. Cairo turned toward her, his face a mask of shock and dawning horror. "Leah," he whispered desperately. She raised one hand gently. "You knew," she said clearly. "You just didn't think I would speak." The room transformed from celebration to reckoning in seconds. The people who had judged, dismissed, and humiliated now stood exposed under the chandelier's unforgiving light. Leora handed the microphone back and walked straight to her mother, taking her hand firmly. "You're not leaving," she said softly. Senna squeezed her fingers. "I never planned to." Around them, the illusion of superiority shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces. The aftermath. The reception continued, but the power had shifted irreversibly. Conversations broke into anxious clusters as people suddenly realized they'd catastrophically misjudged the situation. Cairo's aunt gripped her champagne glass like a lifeline, forcing a smile that looked physically painful. "This is clearly a misunderstanding," she announced loudly, as if volume could rewrite reality. Leora turned slightly. "It wasn't a misunderstanding when you called my mother an embarrassment." The aunt's smile collapsed entirely. Senna's voice cut through, soft but devastating. "You said it. And you meant every word." Cairo's uncle stepped forward, palms raised in corporate negotiation mode. "Let's not ruin this beautiful day." "My day was ruined," Leora interrupted calmly, "the moment you decided my mother didn't belong." Cairo finally found his voice, strained and pleading. "Leah, please. Not like this." She looked at him, not with anger but with something worse, disappointment. "How did you want it, Cairo? Quiet? Hidden? Should I have swallowed their disrespect to make your family comfortable?" His jaw tightened. "I didn't know they would actually do that." Senna turned to him gently. "You knew their thinking. You just hoped your wife would accept it." The wedding coordinator hovered nearby, panicked. Leora signaled her with a small nod. "Continue the program. No one is stopping the celebration. We're just stopping the disrespect." Meanwhile, guests, especially from Cairo's side, frantically recalculated what this new truth meant. Some approached Senna with sudden, desperate politeness. "Madam, we didn't realize." Senna lifted one hand gently. "You didn't realize because you never asked. You assumed." In that single word, assumed, the entire room heard the real accusation. The private confrontation. Cairo pulled Leora aside near the floral archway, his face ashen. "Why didn't you tell me you were going to say that?" Leora blinked slowly. "Why didn't you tell me your family planned to throw my mother out?" He hesitated, searching for different ground. "This is humiliating." "For whom?" Her voice was ice. "For you? For everyone." His frustration was showing now. "My mother was humiliated first," Leora said evenly. "You're just feeling the echo." Cairo looked away, jaw clenched. "You made them look like criminals." Leora's eyes narrowed. "So you admit it? This was about protecting their image." The truth had slipped out before he could catch it. "I was trying to keep peace." "Peace doesn't mean silence, Cairo. Peace means fairness." His mother approached then, posture rigid, face tight with forced control. "Leora, you're part of this family now. You shouldn't embarrass us publicly. Leora turned fully toward her. I'm part of a family that just got insulted publicly. And I will never be part of any family that demands my mother shrink to make you comfortable. The woman inhaled sharply. So you'll choose her over us? I choose dignity over arrogance, Leora replied simply. Senna stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. Let them speak. They're showing you exactly who they are. That sentence struck Cairo harder than any shouting would have. He stared at Senna as if truly seeing her for the first time, not as a poor woman who should be grateful, but as a woman who had raised someone too strong to be controlled by shame. The truth emerges. As cautious celebration resumed, real negotiations began in urgent whispers. Cairo's uncle cornered the coordinator near the service entrance. Who exactly owns this venue? He asked, trying to sound casual. The coordinator glanced nervously at Leora, who walked over with Senna beside her. It's owned by a holding company, Leora explained professionally. My mother is the primary shareholder. The uncle blinked rapidly. But we paid. You paid the invoice, Leora corrected with a faint smile. To the company my mother owns. Near the bar, Cairo's mother spoke urgently to her husband. We need to fix this immediately. Her husband raised a warning hand. Keep your voice down. People are watching. That was the bitter irony. Now they cared about being watched. Leora heard fragments as she passed. Estate papers, property lines, shared ownership. She realized with strange calm that Cairo's family had lived for years assuming they were the superior side of this marriage. They treated her mother like background scenery because they believed money and class only flowed one direction. The truth was simpler and more devastating. Senna had never needed their approval. She had simply never announced her position. Leora leaned toward her mother. Are you okay? Senna's lips curved slightly. I'm fine. I'm watching you become who you were always meant to be. Leora swallowed hard. Did you want me to stop? Senna shook her head once, firmly. No. I wanted you to stand. Leora understood then. This wasn't just wedding drama. This was generational correction. The apology. Later, when the first dance ended, Cairo requested a private conversation, this time with Senna present. They sat in a quiet lounge within the venue, away from music and judgment. Cairo looked diminished, hands clasped tightly. Senna, I didn't intend for you to be disrespected. Senna's gaze remained steady and unforgiving. Intent doesn't erase impact. Cairo nodded reluctantly, then turned to Leora. Did you really know about the estate? I knew the legal structure, Leora said. I also knew you never asked. You never wondered about my mother's life, her sacrifices, her achievements. You just accepted what your family assumed. Cairo flushed. That's not fair. You married me, Leora leaned forward slightly, but you kept me outside your family's real thinking. You let them treat my mother like she was nothing. Senna added softly, managing people who disrespect others isn't leadership, Cairo. It's fear. He looked down. I just wanted peace. Peace at the cost of my mother's dignity isn't peace, Leora said. It's surrender. What do you want now? His voice was barely audible. Leora chose her words with surgical precision. First, a direct apology to my mother. Publicly, not privately. Public disrespect requires public correction. Cairo's eyes widened. In front of everyone? Yes. Senna added quietly, and it must be genuine. Cairo stared at the floor for a long moment. Finally he whispered, okay. Second, Leora continued, we set boundaries with your family starting today. If they can't respect mine, they lose access to me. Non-negotiable. Cairo's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. He finally understood. The power he'd assumed he had in this marriage was conditional. Leora wasn't threatening him. She was defining herself. The public reckoning. When they returned to the reception hall, the atmosphere had shifted into wary politeness. People smiled, but their eyes tracked every movement like spectators at a decisive match. Cairo approached the microphone, hands visibly trembling. Everyone, I need to say something. The room fell silent instantly. He glanced at Leora, then at Senna. Today my family acted in a way that was profoundly wrong. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Senna, his voice grew steadier, I'm sorry. You were disrespected in a place where you should have been honored. You were judged by people who had no right to judge you. And I, his voice cracked slightly, I failed to protect you when I should have. Senna stood, posture dignified. She didn't smile or look pleased. She simply nodded once, accepting the apology as a beginning, not a conclusion. Cairo's mother looked furious but didn't dare interrupt. The room had turned. Leora stepped forward, taking Senna's hand. My mother belongs beside me. And anyone who cannot respect that does not belong close to my life. The words weren't shouted. They were final. Leora led Senna to the front table, placing her in the seat that had been denied. The symbolism was quiet but unmistakable. Cairo followed slowly, thoughtfully. The wedding continued, but the power dynamics had permanently shifted and everyone knew it. The new beginning. Weeks passed. Cairo's family stopped calling, not from respect but calculation. Lawyers reached out instead, carefully polite. Leora declined meetings she wasn't ready for. One afternoon, Senna said something that stayed with Leora forever. They didn't look down on me because I was poor. They looked down on me because they thought I needed them. That's what frightened them, Leora replied. Cairo tried in small ways, listening more, speaking less, questioning his family's influence. Leora observed rather than reacted. Love, she now understood, wasn't proven through words spoken under pressure, but through choices made when no one was watching. Finally, Leora invited Cairo to neutral ground. I won't live in a marriage where my mother must earn dignity. Cairo listened without interrupting. And I won't shrink myself to make your family comfortable. I understand, he said quietly. I thought marrying you meant stepping into your world, Leora continued. But you expected me to step into yours silently, to accept their judgments without question. The truth settled between them like morning fog. I don't want that anymore, Cairo said. Leora studied him carefully. Then your actions will prove it. Boundaries were set. Visits became structured. Disrespect was no longer tolerated, not even subtly. Senna remained central in Leora's life, unapologetically visible. The legacy. Looking back months later, Leora understood that the wedding had given her something more valuable than celebration: clarity. Her husband's family had revealed themselves when they believed power belonged solely to them. And in that revelation, Leora had discovered who she truly was. She was not someone who would sacrifice justice for peace. She was not someone who would trade dignity for acceptance. The venue, the estate, the wealth, all of it mattered far less than the moment she chose to stand beside her mother without apology. The shock her husband's family felt was never really about ownership. It was about realizing they had catastrophically misjudged the woman who married into their lives. Leora didn't walk away angry. She walked forward informed. And that knowledge, quiet, firm, and irreversible, became the foundation of every decision she made from that day on. The wedding that was supposed to be about unity became about something far more important: respect. And respect, once demanded and received, changed everything. What would you have done in Leora's position? Share your thoughts below and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories of dignity and strength.